Hello YouTube. I wanted to talk about something right quick. Every now and again when I'm bored, I watch Moesha. Moesha is on Tubi, y'all. It was on Netflix about 2 years ago, and they took it off, I guess, because nobody was watching it. But it is on Tubi now, all 6 seasons. And I wanted to briefly talk about a popular topic. Just was on my mind. Can men and women be friends? And I am referencing Moesha because her friend was Hakeem, and they ended up dating, and he ended up hurting her by kissing Nisi. And they went back to friends, and the very last episode, they got intimate. Ooh, yeah. Moesha finally gave it up. Like, Moesha, they imply that her and Q had sex because he proposed and she accepted, but then she thought about it and broke up with him because he was just going too much, and she didn't want to deal with the long distance. He was going all over the world to perform, and she did not want that. So I think I mentioned this in a previous video. I don't really like the later episodes because it's a lot of drama. You see Frank in a different light. He was like a positive black father, and then he turns into this lying person. And yes, it's relatable, but I feel like if you need to make it dramatic, why not Moesha get pregnant, or stick to the Dorian story of the wayward child, or why you had to bother Frank's character. That was just kind of messed up, because in reality you have a lot of black fathers that's like that. But give us a little hope. I feel like TV should be realistic, but give us a little hope. Like Fresh Prince. I'm not a big fan of Fresh Prince, but they gave us a little hope. The uncle was a judge. The wife, I forgot what the wife did, but Fresh Prince gave us a little hope, that yes, you can be something and make it out the hood. And they gave us a little hope. They lived in a mansion in Bel Air. They had a butler. They gave us a little hope. The Jeffersons, George Jefferson, he had a cleaning business. They sold their home for a luxury apartment. What's the deluxe apartment in the sky? They gave us shows that gave us hope. Bill Cosby. I never was a fan of the show, but he was a doctor. The wife was a lawyer. It's important to have shows with a little hope. And I feel like with Moesha, when they did that to Frank's character, it was like, why? Like, why did you have to do that? Disturbing enough, the writers of Moesha were black men. Because I looked it up. I was like, who the hell is writing this stuff? And the writers were black men for Moesha. Why they chose to do a dark turn, I don't know. I remember being in the 6th grade, and everybody was watching it still, and we all agreed that it was getting whack. Like, it's like Dorian had an omen. When he came on the show, that's when the show went downhill. But back to Hakeem and Moesha. So Hakeem and Moesha, they grew up together. He's the boy next door. He's not that attractive. He grew up in a single parent household. He had no family outside of his mother. There's an episode where she tries to get his father to meet him, and it doesn't go well. So Hakeem is kind of like he's not the wayward child, but is skeptical with him. And I'm not saying that everybody who comes from a family, because sometimes it's like that. Sometimes you have single moms that don't have family, the father's not around. Sometimes it's not their fault. They just made a bad decision, and if they don't have parents, it is what it is, right? So Hakeem, and that was the sad part about Hakeem's character. Like, he had no uncles. There was no mention of a grandmother, at least, or a grandfather. All he had was his mom. He came over to eat because she was never home. It was played by the same woman who plays the mother of Family Matters. So she's a single mom because she has no help. So no boyfriend. The mother, you never see the woman with a boyfriend. You never see her a grandparent, nothing. So she has 3 jobs to take care of Hakeem, and so she doesn't really have time to cook. If you have 3 jobs, I can't imagine what that's like. I've had 2 jobs before, but with me, to God be the glory, I've always been flexible. Like, I've always been the mom that was still able to have a life, still able to go to school, and still able to do things because I had help. And with Hakeem's mother, she had no help, right? It was just her and Hakeem. And so Hakeem becomes like a part of Moesha's family because he comes over for meals because there's no one at home to cook for him. She's constantly at work. So I wanted to talk about that because he ends up falling hard for her. And it is possible to have genuine feelings for somebody like that, but it's kind of like like Captain Saberhole, like, well, your father was there for me and you was always there for me, so therefore I'm in love with you. So you got to be careful with that. And I think I mentioned this before. I didn't like Moesha's character in college because when you're that age, it's supposed to be raining men. And I wanted to send a warning out to my young ladies and my ladies in general. If you have a guy friend, and I feel like this happens to every woman when they're single. If you have a guy friend, trust me, you put him in the friend zone for a reason. And I'm going to say that again. Don't feel sorry that you put somebody in the friend zone. We have something called women's intuition. First, there's common sense. Second of all, there's intuition or a gut feeling. Most women, when we put a man in a friend zone, it's for a very good reason. And I'm going to talk about my own experience, and I wanted to explore Hakeem and Moesha. So they get to college, and Moesha is single. Nobody's trying to get with her. The only other option she had was Q, and that didn't work out. And so she ends up dating Hakeem because of loneliness. And I wanted to talk about that a little bit. Myself, I think I mentioned in a previous video with my friend that I grew up with. We actually met in school. He wasn't the boy next door. We actually met in junior high school. And it was the worst school that I could ever go to. They were abusive. The crazy thing is they're still open. The name of it is Trey Whitfield School. But if you failed the test, they would hit you. Any little thing, they'll look for a reason to hit you. And it was terrible, and I was happy to leave. I was only there for 1 year. But anyway, that's where I met guy. I think I mentioned his name. He has a very common name, so if he sees this and wants to sue, oh well. But his name was Jelani, and he actually didn't live far from me. I grew up in East New York, and he grew up in the borderline of Flatbush. So once I moved to Brownsville, it was walking distance because Brownsville is very close to. Brownsville is not the best area, but it's very close to everybody. Like, I have the 3 train over here, I have the L train over here. If I want to get to Flatbush, I could walk to Flatbush, or I could walk to East New York. Like, it's right in the middle of everything. That's the good part about Brownsville. So I was very close to him in distance, and we became very close friends in our adult life, and we did try to explore it romantically because I was alone. And I can't stress that enough. Now, we had a little romance thing in junior high. He doesn't really count that. I don't either. But I wanted to explore him romantically because, and I can admit, I was alone. I was like in my early 20s. I was like 24, 25. And when we became intimate, we both agreed, let's go back to platonic friends. 1 year after that, he cut me off. I reached out to him pandemic, and then he cut me off again. And I think I spoke about that in a previous video, that it wasn't until that text message that I realized he had issues that had nothing to do with me. And one thing I can't stress enough, if you have a really good friend and y'all have a good friendship, do not mess it up because of loneliness, because I can't stress that enough. And so with Hakeem and Moesha, they was able to bounce back after the backstabbing thing with Niecy. And the fact that he kissed Niecy, even though it's just a show, that's messed up. Like, how could you do that? And Moesha didn't have to hear about it. She seen it with her own eyes. She walked in the room and they were kissing. And then it was shocking for Niecy, because it's like, you always said ugh with Hakeem, but then you kissing him. And it definitely does happen. You know, that's a part of the show that I do respect, is they show like when Niecy, she messed with Hakeem's friend, and it was just a one-time thing, and she was embarrassed embarrassed by it. And it definitely does happen. But it was interesting. Yeah, so basically, so I feel like a lot of women are guilty of it. I know I had a former friend that I spoke about her on this channel too. Our friendship went into the deep end because of dudes. Like, they just kept playing her. But the mistake she kept making was a lot of her so-called male friends, they was just predators. And I say that because they knew she was vulnerable. They stuck around. And I wanted to explore that too on this video. There's different type of male friends. You do have guy friends that actually do want to be with you and do right by you. That's very rare. I would say about my homeboy from high school. So I remember telling him, like, be careful, because that girl broke up with him off and on for 10 years. And so she, like, was never, like, nobody ever really took her out on a date. They all dogged her out. But my homeboy treated her decently. But they go Dutch. Like, even when they were dating, they go Dutch. So he's smart, because he want to make sure, like, she's not with him for money or anything. And you know, I think that's fair. You know, that's his standard, and that's what it do. But she always had him in the friend zone. And I found that interesting. And I put him in the friend zone because there's just certain things about a man, like cleanliness, cleaning your room, cooking. If you don't do those things, that's going to be a turn off. Like, he's not athletic. He didn't have any hobbies. He didn't have like a social group. It's like a lot of things that I look for. And I just wasn't attracted to him. So we had our little thing in high school, nothing serious, but we remained friends, and I kept him as a friend, and I'm happy I did. And so he's married now or whatever, and him and her were friends for a long time. Like, you know, they dated off and on, and then they were friends. And he was standing at the woodwork. He was obviously waiting for her, because that's who he married, right? So he's the type of friend. So that type of male friend is someone who actually genuinely cared about her. And so look where they are today, married with 2 children in Albany. She does social work, he does corrections. So upper middle class area. They each have their own car. They're doing very well in life, happily ever after. And then you have people like with my other former friend, all the dudes that was her so-called friends, and one in particular was she knew from junior high. So it was very rough for her, because these men, I feel like they were predators, because they got with her and didn't want her. And I feel like there is a reason why that happens, because like with my friend Jelani, just certain things about his personality I didn't like. He was judgmental. He had a phobia of homeless people. It's just when you hear somebody talking, you get turned off. And any little thing, he would cut me off. Like the last time he cut me off was because we had a disagreement about PB and Rock, a rapper that we neither of us listened to. So if it's like, if you could get that upset over something so little, I would never want to date somebody like that, because it's like, I'm not allowed to have my own opinion. And I always said that to him. I said, you don't have to agree with me. You don't have to. You're your own person. Obviously, you was raised different. I feel like a lot of people like that, they was raised a certain way. I wasn't raised to judge people. That's not how my parents raised me. So, that plays a part too. I grew up relatively poor, not dirt poor, but I think that played a part of it too. Like, I went to private schools, but I lived in a hood. We lived in an apartment, so I think that plays a major role as to, there's no way I would ever look down at somebody that's homeless, because that could be me. Whether as with him, he kind of grew up in a middle class, private house and stuff. So I think that kind of, but then again, I can't say that, because my former friend that went through it with dudes, she was a social worker, and she never, and I could truly say about one positive thing I could say, she never looked down at nobody. And she could have, because she lived in Long Island, very big, beautiful house. She always had a car. Well, not always. When I say always had a car, like, she always had access to a car. Like, both her parents drove. And then I think she got her first car at like 21, like really, really young. But she never like put me down for where I lived. And she never put people down. And I always admired that about her. I also, there's a few social workers. That's one thing I can shout out to social workers. A lot of them do come from the suburbs, but they have empathy, and that's good, yeah. So I don't know if she was like that because that's how she was raised, Both her parents were supervisors at their jobs, respectfully, social work, and she went into social work thereafter, and she always was empathetic. That was the one thing about her that was really good. But unfortunately, the dudes that was her so-called friends, they played her. And I wanted to talk about that a little bit, because you got to be careful about guys like that. Now, with Hakeem and Moesha, it's hard to tell because he kissed Niecy. So it's kind of like, well, if you love Moesha so much, why would you kiss Niecy, right? And then there's a scene in there where he doesn't want to give her the key to his apartment. So with Hakeem, it's kind of hard to tell if he really had good intentions. The season had cut off abruptly because the ratings were low. They could have ended it better than that. The last episode is that Miles was kidnapped. So if they was to do a spinoff, we want to know, like, what happened to Miles. Was Moesha pregnant? Because Jerome, which is Hakeem's roommate and friend, he found a pregnancy test in the garbage of the girls' room where Moesha was staying, and it's kind of like, well, whose pregnancy test was that? So Hakeem and Moesha come in, and they're like, we got to tell you something. Dorian, they're like, it's something we got to tell you, X, Y, and Z. And he's like, no, I got to tell y'all something. Miles is kidnapped. And then she collapses and Hakeem catches her. But I wanted to talk about, you have to be aware of the so-called guy, because some guy friends, I was blessed with decent guy friends. I've never had that many, but the guy friends that I have had were decent. Unfortunately, like I told y'all with Jelani, he had his issues, and I hope that he's able to deal with it, because he had issues that had nothing to do with me. And to cut somebody off because of a disagreement over a rapper, I just knew it wasn't normal. I just knew something was up with him. And I said to him, thank you, because I'm tired of this cat and mouse chase. You're always cutting me off for something stupid. And it's like, you know what? Thank you. Because I don't need that in my life. That's just immature. That I have a difference of opinion and it bothers you that much that you want to cut me off. Like, that doesn't make any sense, But get into, so I could truly say he was a true friend. Even though he cut me off, there's nothing bad I could really say about him. It's just his viewpoints on certain things. Like, he didn't really believe in God like that. So that was kind of like a turn off for me. He said that he stopped going to church because he asked a question about dinosaurs and they didn't want to talk about it. Dinosaurs are not in the Bible. And I told him, I said, they probably got frustrated because you were off topic. Like, think about it. It's Bible study. Why are you asking questions about dinosaurs? If I was the teacher, Sunday school teacher, Bible school teacher, I would be like, why do you feel like that's an appropriate question to ask right now? Like, it's not even about, they trying to shut you down. You're going off topic. There's no mention of dinosaurs in the Bible at all. So why would you, even though, okay, you was 9 years old, but at 9, you smart enough. Like, I knew not to ask certain questions at a certain time. Like, they teach you that in school. Like, okay. And it happens because I feel like I've done that as a kid. Sometimes you're in school and the teacher will say, you're off topic. You're off topic. So for you to bring that up in a Bible study situation, you was out of line. And I told him that you shouldn't have asked that, because what does that have to do with the Bible? Nothing. So they shut you down because you was wrong for bringing that up. Now, if that's something you wanted to explore, you go home and ask your parents. You don't sit there and ask a question about dinosaurs. So I said, okay, what else happened for you to be turned off? Nothing. He just doesn't even visit church. And I'm okay with that, but I feel like you need more reasons than that, bro. He was just like anti-God. He didn't really believe in God. And I still accepted him even after that. Because most people in my shoes would be like, hold up, you don't go to church, you don't believe in Jesus Christ. One time we was talking about Moses, and he was like, I know you have more intelligence than that to believe in the Moses story. And I said, excuse me? That's my beliefs. There's scientific evidence that the chariot races were underwater and they were preserved. It was on National Geographic for your information. Like, there's evidence that there was a Moses, there was a Pharaoh, and these people lived. And even if you don't believe in the Bible, just look up Egyptian Empire. That's all the proof I need. That's all the proof I need. Me personally. I'm very, if you believe in science, you have to believe in God, because they go hand in hand. But a person that's like adamant on not believing in God, they're going to make every excuse. But other than that, I could truly say he was a perfect gentleman. He was different than most men. Most men, they don't know how many people they've been with. They sleep with prostitutes, strippers. He had morals. And I could truly say him and my friend that's married, they always gave me hope that there are men out there that's not just sleeping around with everybody. Even though he didn't believe in God. My friend that's married, he believes in God. He believes in prayer and all that good stuff. But the one that didn't believe in God, Jelani, he had very good morals. And I always looked up to that. When young men, they start talking about women, he will always be the one to be like, no, don't say that, or don't, he had very good morals, and I like that about him. But there was just certain things about his character that was a turn off. You know what I'm saying? And I wanted to say, as a woman, when you put somebody in a friend zone, trust that gut instinct. Don't feel like, oh, I let a good one get away. You didn't. Trust me, you didn't. And then the other type of male friend, which I wanted to talk about, some guys will be your friend because they want to have sex with you. And it's sad to say, they want to have sex with you, and once they explore you, they dump you. my former friend, unfortunately, the one I told y'all about, she went through that again and again and again. And one particular one, they was friends since junior high school, and he got married and didn't tell her. And it was sad because they did something a week before, and then he got married. And the way she found out is on Facebook. So she was very, very upset with that, because she didn't just lose a man, she lost one of her best friends. And it happened to her time and time and time again and again and again and again. And it happened because of loneliness. Like, she didn't really meet guys the normal way. It was either off the internet or one of her guy friends. And so I can't stress that enough. As a woman, you got to be careful when you're dating. Am I dating this person out of loneliness? Do I really actually like this person, or is it because I'm lonely? Do I actually find them attractive? Can I see myself with this person, or do I see myself changing them? That's the key thing. Like, if you find yourself trying to change a man, you probably really don't want to be with him. It's just you lonely, right? So, if you find yourself messing around with your guy friends, it's probably out of loneliness. With me, I never messed around any guy. I had another guy friend from work, never did nothing. I was never attracted to him. Even if he was single, I wouldn't do nothing with him. Now, he would make jokes, and I think he was attracted to me, but they had issues in their marriage, and they're still together today. They actually got a house in Texas, and I wish them well. But yeah, so even if he was single, and you're gonna bump into people like that's married, they might be attracted to you, and it's like, nah, bruh, it's not gonna happen. So yeah. But I can't stress that enough. Hakeem and Moesha should have never been an item. She only dated him because she was alone. Because think about it, if Moesha really wanted to be with him, they would have been dated. She wouldn't have waited till college to start dating him. They ended up dating because she didn't have a lot of options, and that I hated that for her. In the show, it was kind of like a lonely Moesha. She started turning into like Niecy. Niecy was lonely, nobody want her type shit. And Moesha, she had Q, but she turned him down. I feel like they was only engaged because she didn't have nobody, so it just shows you like the accuracy for some people. They honestly get with somebody out of loneliness. And you have a lot of people that's like, oh, we was friends for 10 plus years and we're together. And I remember when me and my former friend, when him and I had our thing, I remember telling a coworker, and this was 10 years ago, so long ago, and he was like, oh, so y'all just lonely and y'all just whatever. And it wasn't until he said that, and it made sense. Like, yeah, the only reason why I gave him the time of day is because I was alone at the time. And so I can't stress that to people enough. Like, is this person your type? Is this person, like, with Jelani, he was my type as far as, like, he was classy. Like, that boy could dress. I love the way he dressed. He wasn't ghetto. He never wore like Jordans or nothing. I hate niggas who wear Jordans. It's just something like it just screams hood to me. But he didn't wear Jordans. We just went everywhere together, museums. We went to plays together. We did concerts. He was just a very classy man. But it was just certain things I just couldn't get with, you know what I mean? But he was a defender. He was ride or die. Like, he was a cool person, and that's why I was good with being friends with him, because he was a good person overall. He wasn't perfect, but he was a good person, And I remember he joked around and said, oh, if we're both still single at 40, we'll get married, ha ha ha. And I was telling him, I was like, you know, hook me up with one of your friends. And he was like, well, you hook me up with one of your friends. I said, and I told him from the heart, I said, to be honest, I don't know anybody that's on your level, Jelani. Like, you deserve the best. And I mean that shit. Like, you deserve la creme and la creme. And the girls I know is not on your level. They not. And the ones that are on your level, they're taken. They got somebody. So, you know, like, I really wish him well. I really do. The fact that he wasn't married, I was shocked, because he is very much husband material. I remember I gave him the key and I came home and it was rose petals everywhere. Like, he very romantic. He cooks. Like, he's just that dude, but not from me. You know what I mean? And I can't stress that enough, that if you have a gut feeling and stuff, stick to that. You know, Hakeem and Moesha, they show you, like, people that are friends that need to stay friends. You know, and it's a shame that they cut it off, because it's like, what would have become of them? I think they probably would have broke up again, because you could tell Moesha wasn't really into him. And that's a lot of couples. Like, the dude is into the chick more. And you got people who say, like, oh, your man is supposed to be into you more. No, I feel like it should be even. Nobody should like nobody more than the other person. That doesn't make sense. It needs to be equal feelings. And it's a relationship. It's a relationship. You're relating to each other, are you not? You know, so yeah, just women, listen to your intuition. Not everybody's your friend. You got some guys out here, they just want to fuck you and leave you. They are not your friend. They just want to fuck you. And then on the other side of that, you have dudes that really do want to be with you. And you do have some that really are true friends, you know. So you got to find that. And if a dude is a really good dude, you don't want to mess that friendship up with hormones, right? And then now you don't have a friend no more. Because good friends are hard to find, y'all. They really are. You know, even female friends, a lot of females is jealous. They want your life, or, you know, all type of stuff. And so if you got a good guy friend, that's a blessing. Why mess that up because you're lonely or horny? And those are my thoughts.